2 years. Then I got there 5 years. They said to me before we started, and that's a true story before the project started. Celine Dion's son was supposed to follow her footsteps. Everyone expected him to sing. Everyone expected him to stay in the music world. But René-Charles had other plans. At 24, he finally spoke the truth about what he's been doing behind closed doors. The family kept it quiet for years. His mother was worried. His late father would have been shocked. But René-Charles didn't care about their fears anymore. What he admitted this year explains why he's been so secretive, and why Celine has been so protective of his privacy. Celine Dion was born on March 30, 1968 in a small town called Charlemagne near Montreal. She was the youngest of 14 children. Their house was so full that her mother joked there wasn't even space for one more spoon. With 16 people under one roof, the noise and energy never stopped. There was no luxury, no quiet corner, just constant movement and shared everything. Celine was a baby in a world of chaos, one of nearly 20 mouths to feed. Her family lived like most in their neighborhood, crowded, noisy, and poor. As she later said, they didn't know they were struggling because everyone around them lived the same way. There wasn't even a crib waiting for her. When she came home from the hospital, her parents placed her in a dresser drawer lined with blankets. It wasn't a quirky decision. It was their only option. There was no money for extras, no room for baby furniture. At the time, the average Canadian family made around $6,000 a year. But the Dons had far less and far more children. Her early life was shaped by limits and hard choices. As she grew, space didn't open up. It only got tighter. Celine had to share a small bed with multiple sisters, sometimes 3, to a mattress. The house was so packed that couches, floors, and even hallways became sleeping spots. She later said, "The girls slept like sardines, crammed together every night." This wasn't just a few years of squeezing in. It lasted through her teenage years. While most Canadian families were shrinking, hers felt like its own crowded village. Her father worked as a butcher, long hours, for very little pay. Her mother stayed home, managing the household and sewing clothes from scraps and hand-me-downs. It was a family powered by survival, not savings. But despite all the hardship, there was always one thing in the air: music. Her father sang, her mother played violin, and even her name came from a song. They named her Celine after a French ballad they loved, almost like a quiet hope that one day their little girl would carry that song into the world. But even with all that love and music at home, the outside world wasn't kind. In school, Celine was mocked constantly. She was skinny, had big teeth, and didn't look like the other kids. They called her vampire. The teasing wasn't just once in a while. It was every day. Celine later said the bullying left scars she never forgot. She remembered the dread she felt walking into class, knowing exactly what was waiting. Childhood pictures from that time show a quiet girl who seemed unsure of herself, someone trying to disappear. When she began singing publicly as a teenager, things didn't get easier. Local tabloids mocked her looks and called her Canine Dion because of her teeth. She was only a child, but adult journalists joined in the ridicule. She was getting noticed for her voice, but the headlines were focused on her appearance. By the time she was 18, she'd had enough. She quietly stepped away, got dental surgery, caps and braces, and came back, ready to be seen for what she could do, not how she looked. School had never been a happy place for her. She once said very simply, "I detested school." It wasn't just about the bullying. She didn't feel like she belonged there. Her real education came from her home. Her siblings were her teachers. The dinner table was her classroom. She learned how to sing, perform, and survive from the people around her, not from books or chalkboards. When money was tight, the Dion family didn't give up. They formed a band literally. All 14 children were part of it. They called themselves Dion's Family and performed at local venues across Quebec. Celine was just 5 when she sang in her parents' piano bar. She wasn't treated like a novelty. She was part of the act. By age 12, she had already written her first song and recorded a demo. Her very first public performance was at her brother Michel's wedding in 1973. This wasn't just about fun, it was survival. The shows helped bring in money, and more importantly, they gave Celine a stage. While the schoolyard made her feel small, the family basement made her feel safe. After school, she wouldn't hang out with friends. She'd run straight home and dive into music with her siblings. Their basement became her refuge. It was loud and alive, filled with instruments and laughter and song. It was in that basement that Celine found her voice. It was where she turned pain into power. Every note she sang was a way to fight back against the world that mocked her. In June 1980, little girl walked into a local studio with her family. They had saved just enough money to record a demo. It wasn't fancy, just a few simple songs written with help from her mother and siblings. At that age, most kids were still figuring out how to ride a bike. But this girl had something else on her mind: music. That day, surrounded by her family, she sang into a studio mic and unknowingly took the first step on a path that would eventually reach hundreds of millions. What started in a kitchen would one day echo in stadiums across the world. Her mother, Terrace, didn't just believe in her voice. She staked everything on it. She mortgaged their family home just to send that demo to a man named René-Angel. She chose him because he managed Quebec's most famous singer, Jeanette Reno.